안녕하십니까? 제20회 제주포럼에 참석해주신 여러분, 지금부터 동북아 디지털 협약의 구축 디지털 시대에 평화와 협력을 위한 청년 리더십 세션을 시작하겠습니다. 원활한 행사 진행을 위해서 휴대전화는 매너 모드로 전환해 주시길 바랍니다. 본 행사는 한국어, 영어로 동시 진행됩니다. 통역을 원하시는 분들께서는 자리에 놓여진 통역기를 착용하시기 바랍니다. 한국어는 4번, 영어는 5번입니다.
Please make sure your cell phone is either off or on silent mode. Korean and English simultaneous interpretation is provided in this session. If you would like interpretation, please use the receiver provided at your seat. Korean is channel 4. English is channel 5.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session, Crafting a Northeast Asia Digital Compact, Youth Leadership for Peace and Collaboration in the Digital Age. A long name, I know. This session is hosted by us in the UN Political Department, which I like to call it. The official name is the UN Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, DPPA for short, so you'll hear me refer to DPPA. I am Linda, and I am a New York-based political affairs officer, and I'm originally from Norway, and I cover primarily the Korean Peninsula in DPPA as a desk officer for the DPRK and ROK, and I also cover youth, peace, and security agenda in our team. And we're very honored to be part of this 20th Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity for the third consecutive year. And I'm pleased to be moderating this session with such an eminent panel of youth from Northeast Asia. And I will introduce the speakers shortly. But before that, I just wanted to share a few words on DPPA and what we do and our objectives. For those who are less familiar with DPPA, DPPA is part of the UN Secretariat in New York, and we work to prevent conflict, support inclusive political solutions, and promote sustainable peace. As you can understand, this is not necessarily easily measurable, and it's long-term work, so it's hard to show kind of the short-term impact. But we try, and we work tirelessly to build trust and engagement in increments, step by step. And given the geopolitical tensions that we see globally, regionally, we have to find new entry points and innovations for dialogue and for peace. And this involves engaging with emerging trends like digital transformation and ensuring that innovations can serve as tools for cooperation and not division. And moreover, cooperation and peace cannot be sustained without the meaningful inclusion of women and youth. In my team in DPPA, we have been engaging on the youth, peace, and security agenda since 2019. And we've been building and connecting and expanding on this network of visionary, great youth peace builders from Republic of Korea, from Japan, from China, and from Mongolia, working to amplify and institutionalize youth engagements and share best practices between youths and experts and government officials and in the UN system. And I also want to specify that we have formally invited DPRK counterparts in the past, but they have chosen not to participate. But we continue to share about this project with them, and they've been positive. In Northeast Asia in particular, there are few to no regional security mechanisms. So that's also why we initiated this project, Futuring Peace in Northeast Asia, which explores then how youth leadership can shape a more peaceful and collaborative regional future. And Jerry will introduce shortly the initiative and the past and present phases. But first, let me introduce our speakers. So first, we have Jerry Lee. He's from Hong Kong, China. He has been taking part in the Futuring Peace in Northeast Asia project since 2021. So quite a long time already. He's our veteran. And he's currently a consultant with DPPA on the project. He is a lawyer, and he has extensive global research expertise, and he has studied at Cambridge, Harvard, and he's a PhD candidate at the University of Sydney, where he explores citizenship theory. So give him a little applause. And then we have Junhee SEO. Did I pronounce it wrong? Yeah. Junhee is a peace researcher and human rights advocate committed to gender justice, refugee rights, and inclusive peace building. She has a master's degree in UN Peace from Kyunghee University, and Junhee has been active in legal advocacy, public education, and community organizing. Please give her a round of applause as well. And then we have Tina FUWA from Japan. She is currently working as an open source intelligence analyst in the field of disinformation and misinformation in Japan. She has an educational background in law and international relations, and she holds future aspirations in exploring the utilization of data in empirical evidence-based policy research. So give her also a little hand. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Jerry to start a presentation of our work.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Jerry, and thank you, Linda, for the introduction, and welcome to our presentation. We're very happy and glad to be here. So, for our presentation today, oh, sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so for our presentation today on building an equitable digital society, anchored to and inspired by youth perspectives from Northeast Asia, we'll be presenting 13 recommendations. And prior to going into the substance of our presentation, I'll take you through a quick allocation of our presentation. So I'll be going over the project at large that Linda referred to, so the Futuring Peace in Northeast Asia initiative. And then I'll be going into the current phase. A huge seminal framework for us was the UN Global Digital Compact, and so we'll be discussing how it influenced us and what is the GDC. We'll go into the 13 recommendations, followed by next steps of our project, and a chance to discuss any of our recommendations as well as more at the end. So to give a quick introduction of the Futuring Peace in Northeast Asia project, so the project piloted in 2021 in collaboration between UNDPPA and UNESCO. It trained young people from Northeast Asia on methodologies of futures literacy. So how do we think about different possible futures? And it also taught youth in the region digital facilitation skills. So how do we engage in workshops? How do we host workshops? And lead online workshops and discussions. And from these discussions and from learning about these methodologies, youth imagined different futures for the region. So some people saw unity and shared values and emerging shared regional values becoming dominant ones. Some saw more conflict and national tensions. And so the key ideas that were focused in this phase was more soft power. So understanding how culture, like movies and books, can improve communication between regions, between generations. And so moving into phase 2, the project grew, and we partnered with, for us, a Swiss think tank. And it brought together over 140 people from the Northeast Asia region, and they were trained in the methodology of strategic foresight. So how do we envision possible futures by looking at what we want and looking at the past and present? And so the future scenarios that we built through a model of thinking about possible futures in 2040 covered topics like the metaverse as a regional unifying space, cultural identity and media, online safety and digital literacy, and climate action through a youth parliament. So from these, the youth cohort then created real policy recommendations, and this phase was all about moving from the skills we developed from phase 1 to action in phase 2. And phase 3 in 2023 focused on workshopping, so policy bridging, so bringing these policies into rooms with policymakers and understanding what could be improved. And so the goal here was to build networks between youth and policymakers and to support youth leadership in these key areas that I've mentioned as well. So in phase 4 and 5, which brings us to last year and this year. So phase 4 included expanding the project into the Pacific and to continue advancing policy recommendations and presentations to continue workshopping it. And phase 5 today is our focus on the 2 priority areas. So the one our presentation is focused on today is all things digital. Another track that we have is that of climate change. And so we brought in a new youth cohort, working alongside the past participants of our previous phases and develop more targeted and practical recommendations for the region. So considering the regional differences and understanding what needs to be more considered in the larger dialogue of the Global Digital Compact. So I'll bring you to the next slide. So what I have on the slide here is our 2022 policy publication, and I wanted to rehash a little bit of that before we go into the recommendations, because our digital literacy recommendation in this publication focused on these three main areas. So cross-sector collaboration, diplomacy and regional identity, and substance beyond access. And they were key areas that we felt like ongoing regional initiatives needed to also consider more of as we moved ahead. So cross-sector collaboration addresses private and public companies and how we can incentivize private companies to be part of this process. As we all know, money is very important in all things digital and in policy making, so it discussed how we can create partnerships with this in mind. Diplomacy and regional identity address the regional differences across our countries and how we do need to consider the cultural values that are different and how we could incorporate that into digital literacy programs. So this includes difference in terms of censorship material and more. And substance beyond access addresses how nowadays we can't just focus on providing technology to communities, we also have to show them how to use it and to use it in to what degree. And as we have more technological development in urban centers, this really addresses how in rural areas or in more migrant communities, there needs to be localized educational programs. And so before we go into the recommendations, my colleague here, Tina, will talk about the Global Digital Compact and how we have framed our recommendations and some other considerations that we've made.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I'm Tina. I'm a representative from Japan, and I'll be talking to you about the Global Digital Compact. I'm going to split this session into two sections. In the beginning, I'll be talking about the introduction of the Global Digital Compact, so what it is and what it's done. And in the latter part, I'll be talking about the activities of the Young Peace Builders in Northeast Asia initiative, so this current initiative, what we've been up to, and how we'll structure this session as well. So in terms of the Global Digital Compact, to make it very short, the Global Digital Compact is an initiative to promote a global framework for digital cooperation and governance of artificial intelligence. And at its core, it acknowledges the significance of digital technologies in achieving the UN's missions, especially in regards to achieving SDG goals. So the UN has so many different initiatives going on. Basically, the Global Digital Compact is really acknowledging that digital technologies have the capacity to bring these initiatives further. So this compact was adopted as part of the Summit of the Future, held in September of 2024. And these issues at that time, and still very significant as well, things were discussed such as the UN's approach to the increasing geopolitical tensions, emerging digital technologies, and also participation of youth as well. The UN has many important summits and discussions going on all the time, but this summit was especially very significant because it was not merely an expression of the goals for the future, but also a push to reinforce the importance of multilateral governments in tackling these issues. And we've seen that this is a big thing coming under attack recently. So in regards to tackling all of these issues, the Global Digital Compact focuses on topics related to the digital space specifically, and it has from governance on emerging technologies to going into how we can really enhance these opportunities and promote equality and equity in accessing these opportunities as well. Just to highlight a few stats that are mentioned in this document. For example, only 21% of women in low-income countries use the internet. African users pay more than 3 times the global average for mobile data. Data collection is only conducted by a handful of actors. So all these statistics really highlight the accessibility divide that digital opportunities do have, and these things really depend on economic and geographical factors as well. Specifically, when we talk about why the UN can be very significant in this space, digital emerging technologies has a massive private sector presence, and private sector will be very corporate motivated interest. So in order to really ensure that these equitable and equal interests are really being put forward as initiatives, the UN really does play a very important role as well. So the Global Digital Compact is structured into 5 pillars that also act as objectives, as you can see on the screen. The first one is closing digital divides. Second pillar is inclusive and secure digital economies. Third pillar, human rights-based digital spaces. Fourth pillar, international data governance. And the final pillar is global AI governance. So this initiative acts to provide a youth perspective to these objectives, and it will be it is preparing for its evaluation that is set to take place in 2027. So moving on to what we've been up to as part of this Youth Young Peace Builders in Northeast Asia initiative. So for this year, we've built on the work from the representatives we've had for the previous years as well. Each year, they've really discussed different topics and looked into what is impacting the youth today. And they have identified that multilateral cooperation in the digital space is a really key issue that we are facing. And also a quick introduction of what we've been up to is we've had sessions from UN experts as well, from the UN Office of Digital and Emerging Technologies, followed by also a UN Women Governance representative as well. Both of them gave us a very comprehensive explanation of the GDC, especially diving into the UN's approach to AI governance. And our cohort was particularly really interested in the substantial, whether or not the UN can have a substantial impact in its initiatives. And kindly, the questions were answered in a way where there was an explanation on the different methods of managing AI that have been incorporated, such as soft and hard methods as well. We've also had a discussion around women, peace, and security, and how AI can also be enhanced into these agendas as well. And I personally found that the use of AI ranging from, it can be incorporated into enhancing PR activities, so helping with translation, inclusive translation as well, into sign language as well, and also talking about how it can be used for predictive analysis in identifying potential gender-based conflict too. So where does youth come into this? When we talk about youth, are we the most experienced or the most knowledgeable in handling these very, very complex issues? Probably not. But I do think that we really add a key perspective because digital technologies hold incredible potential in creating values to individuals and also their communities as well. And by including and encouraging digital savvy young people, we can not only promote these opportunities to youth, but also enhance the already existing work too. And I really want to highlight this point as well, because on the other hand, these digital technologies have particularly really affected the youth. We've seen the impact of social media on youth mental health and issues with online safety too. And these instances show how youth participation not only should be encouraged, but it's incredibly crucial in order to ensure the well-being of future generations and also to really add the lived experience that each one of us do hold. Okay, so for the sessions, we are presenting 13 policy proposals that touch on these issues. We've structured these based on the 5 pillars of the GDC. So we'll be introducing each pillar as well. So to go to pillar 1, I'll be handing the mic back to Jerry.
Thank you, Tina, for explaining the GDC. So moving straight to the recommendation. So pillar 1 is closing digital divides, and recommendation 1 addresses kind of what I've been referring to in the introduction, the difference between technological advancements and access in rural and urban areas. And as technology continues to advance in urban centers, there's a risk that underdeserved regions are left behind. And so recommendation 1 really addresses how there are huge economic incentives as well as the given social and cultural incentives of creating localized programs within underdeserved areas or rural areas as well. And there are a few examples. For instance, in China, in the Henan province, there was an incorporation of AI in agriculture, and that increased productivity and trade and development within those areas. And in terms of health, they started incorporating AI in rural clinics so that wait times and diagnosis was more streamlined. So we can see here how an incorporation of digital infrastructure in those areas has economic benefits, and that is an incentive for private companies and also governments to incorporate that. But with that said, it is easy to say and is easy to mention, but these programs need to be created from the bottom up as opposed to top down. So our focus here was to ensure that governments weren't just creating these programs and hiring experts and bringing them into rural regions and having these AI digital infrastructure programs completely run by those experts. What we wanted was to also include locals, so to ensure that locals had access to education on how to use the AI programs and what was being implemented so that there was long-term sustainability and that the skill set for the use of AI in this manner could be translated in a more sustainable fashion to local communities. Recommendation 2, establishing youth-led AI literacy hubs in underserved communities. This was inspired by ongoing initiatives in countries like Singapore and India, where we saw that there were AI literacy hubs being placed in community centers and libraries and even in places of worship, where we had youth teaching other youth how to use, from the very bottom, how to use mobile phones, how to use access websites, to a higher level on AI literacy and what AI can be used for. And we saw here that there was a huge importance in youth being involved on both sides, as being teachers and also being learners, as it breaks down the kind of tension that might exist when we're teaching AI in more traditional classroom settings at school, and it also expanded the demographic that could access these hubs. We found that to be extremely important. And recommendation 3, promoting multi-stakeholder funding. So this ties into more alternative forms of funding. So rather than being completely funded by public funds or by private funds, we saw that there were alternative partnership models that could encourage more long-term sustainable funding. So this includes private-public partnerships, public money to de-risk private pilots as well. And so in our policy recommendation, we go more in depth into this, but it's to de-risk the short-term pilots of new technologies, which is quite costly at times. I'll now pass on to Junhee, who will talk about pillar number 2.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Junhee, and I'm honored to speak on behalf of our young peace builders and from Northeast Asia. So today I'll be sharing some of the recommendations we developed together through months of dialogues and workshops as part of the Futuring Peace in Northeast Asia initiative. So I'll be focusing on 2 pillars. So one is an inclusive, open and secure digital economy. And the second one will be a safe and human right-based digital space. So going to pillar 2, recommendation 4 is provide targeted support for marginalized digital entrepreneurs. So this means, in our group discussions, we recognize that not all young people have equal access to digital opportunities, especially with women or LGBTQ youth, rural innovators, or others from marginalized communities face more barriers when trying to launch or grow digital initiatives. So we recommend targeted support through accessible funding and inclusive internship programs and tailored pathways that reflect the realities of underrepresented groups. So we believe this kind of focused support is the key to fair and open digital economy. And recommendation 5 is increased accessibility of AI tools for micro and informal enterprises. So many small or informal businesses, especially in local communities, rely on mobile phones and need tools in their own language. That's why we recommend voice-based, mobile-first, and multilingual AI solutions. Designed specifically for informal workers and local businesses need across Northeast Asia. These tools will help more people benefit from technology regardless of their local, job type, or tech level. And our next pillar, 3, is foster a safe and human right-based digital space. And the recommendation 6 is to implement safeguards against deepfakes and digital harassments. So I believe this is a very hot issue in everywhere around the country, not only in Korea or anywhere else. So this was actually one of our major concerns that came up in our discussions. That was increase in online abuse, especially through deepfakes, often used to target women and activists. So we recommend governments to develop strong legal protections, technical safeguards, and a clear reporting system to respond to digital harassment and manipulated media. So everyone has the right to feel safe and respected in online spaces. And the recommendation 7 is fund intersectional digital safety initiatives. We also believe that digital safety programs need to be co-designed with the communities most affected, such as including LGBTQ youth, people with disabilities, migrants, and ethnic minorities. That's why we recommend funding programs that are inclusive from the start and creating tools that reflect real and local needs, and ensuring the people at most risk are involved in designing the solutions. Digital safety isn't just about the tech. It's about justice, voice, and inclusion. And last recommendation would be recommendation 8, develop peace-building AI standards with ethnic oversight. So as AI becomes more integrated into peace-building efforts, including translation, mediation, and community reconciliation, it's vital to ensure these tools are used responsibly. So we recommend establishing ethnic oversight frameworks for AI use in peace-building contexts, and also ensuring all AI technologies uphold international human rights standards, and involving civil society and affected communities in the development of these standards. Ethnic, right-based AI isn't just about technical issues. It's about building sustainable peace as well. So as closing my presentation, I would like to wrap up. These recommendations reflect what our young peace builders in Northeast Asia believe is needed for a better digital future. We're proud to bring forward these ideas, not just as suggestions, but as a shared vision for peace, rights, and inclusion online. And the next, Tina and Jerry will show the rest of the pillars. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be talking about Pillar 4, which is to do with data governance, and we have 3 recommendations for this section. The first one, recommendation 9, talks about facilitating youth-led forums on regional data stewardship. And in terms of this, we propose as a long-term initiative to establish Northeast Asian youth participants to have a model based on the EU participation model. So youth representation is a massive issue in the political space internationally, but especially in East Asia, we see cultural hurdles to creating these spaces. Many East Asian cultures are traditionally hierarchical, and policy spaces tend to be very risk-adverse and bureaucratic environments. However, I believe that youth-led initiatives will increasingly become a massive asset for unofficial diplomacy and international cooperation, especially as we've seen a rise in geopolitical tensions. It really creates a tense political environment. During these times, a lot of governmental organizations, media, or the general public can be very critical or skeptical of their own country's official efforts to cooperate or collaborate with countries they perceive as threats. In an East Asian context, this is particularly difficult with our shared history. As we've seen in the recent cases, I don't know if you've been keeping up with some discourse online or on X as well, but official government cases where they're trying to establish cooperation can sometimes be called out as unpatriotic or soft on unresolved issues. In my own experience as well, speaking for Japanese culture, we tend to be a more hyper-collectivist society and like to ensure that we have a generalized consensus before we move forward with decisions. And this can make it extremely difficult, especially when it comes to more complex issues. So in this context, youth is a massive asset, especially because they move with less political and social weights. Their impact on maintaining a connection or advancing peaceful initiatives can be extremely powerful, especially when they get even more harder. Just to highlight a few strengths of the Northeast Asia region and their approach to youth as well. So for example, in contrast, we've seen in the UK, there's a trend in limited employment opportunities for youth and seen a reluctance in investing resources into training the youth. Comparatively, Northeast Asia has a culture that really emphasizes the importance of training and structured learning. So we have a lot of capable young individuals. So it's just a matter of really tapping into those resources and making sure we ensure their participation in political spaces. So in terms of how we can make youth participation a part of this pillar, we did some research into the EU participation model, which really emphasizes youth empowerment. So making sure we provide educational opportunities for the youth to know which issues are affecting them most. And also importantly, an advisory council. So we were looking into implementing this advisory type role and creating a framework where the youth are regularly being consulted on key policy decisions as well. In terms of how we can actually do this, we recommend to start incorporating them into ongoing forums that already do exist, like the Youth Internet Governance Forum and the China, Japan, Korea Future Leaders Dialogue as well. And also speaking on this initiative, it also functions on more of a short-term and annual basis. So I would personally love to really see this initiative grow into a youth council-like position as well and to grow its impact. Going into recommendation 10, is to pilot cross-border sharing projects in low-sensitivity sectors, so to establish data sharing agreements, especially in academic and educational networks. So the Global Digital Compact states the importance of these data sharing agreements by highlighting that it's a critical driver of the digital economy and also that it's important in trusted cross-border data flows as well, and also shows its importance in closing data divides too. So data sharing actually is a very important way to collaborate with each other, as it not only expands our digital capacity, but it also establishes a framework where we're creating a relationship with ongoing and mutual goals and building trust with each other. Currently in the Northeast Asia region, we've seen data sharing agreements, for example, the ASEAN-Japan Social Statistics Partnership and the China-Korea SDGs Data Collaboration Agreements. But as a general trend, for example, Japan and Korea have more open policies with the US or the EU, and China with, for example, Saudi Arabia. And I think this really highlights how the current situation of Northeast Asian countries, where we do understand the value of data sharing. However, we've not been able to really establish that trusted framework yet. To highlight some successful examples of how the Asia region has been able to incorporate this, as for example, the ASEAN's digital data governance framework has been especially successful in the capacity of small and medium enterprises. A key point is in creating a standard template of data sharing agreements. So the terms and conditions of data sharing is incredibly clear to begin with, and it really lowers the bar for entry for many of these corporations that would like to join in this initiative. So for the Northeast Asia region, we propose that these data sharing agreements can be piloted first with low sensitivity data. A few research topics that we suggest, for example, is how do youth use digital technologies to enhance their learning, or what are issues facing youth and healthy digital consumption. And we recommend that non-governmental organizations and international organizations start promoting these data sharing agreements as part of their initiatives as well. The last recommendation of this section, recommendation 11, is to develop culturally aware privacy standards for the Northeast Asia region. And we have, through our discussions, we have discussed that we're at the stage where we still need to identify and promote discussions on the issues and the cultural differences that we do have. The Global Digital Compact does talk about how it should be implemented in a human-centric and rights-based governance, while also looking at localizing privacy discourse to regional realities as well. Generally speaking, we do see global initiatives tend to have a Western influence. However, issues like privacy is really not a culturally neutral concept as well. For example, Western legal frameworks usually look at privacy as emphasizing individual control and consent, and a lot of people are more concerned about privacy from surveillance of the state, while in Asian countries, they view privacy as more as an approach to digital rights through the lens of trust in institutions, common welfare, and we tend to have more centralized data processing systems as well. And when we talk about privacy, because it does operate more in a social context, online, things like identifiable pictures, names, political opinions, we can be more sensitive about things like this in Asian culture. So, in terms of how this can be a recommendation, we've seen the conflict of this in the Republic of Korea's example. We've seen, for example, the Personal Information Protection Act has kind of been a blend of these approaches. So it does allow kind of individual consent in how they share data, but also allowing data to be used anonymized for public interest related projects. However, we've also seen the conflict that the government has had, for example, with Western social media companies speaking on the disinformation space. We saw how the previous president had a different interpretation of disinformation compared to other compared to these platforms, and the conflict that does arise there as well. When we talk about more stricter laws, maybe related to privacy compared to Western societies, it's very important to discuss the potential risk and consequences that do come as well. So the youth do propose that we conduct research into these sections and establish a cultural privacy index or an ethical baseline for data usage as well. For our fifth pillar, Jerry.
Thank you, Tina. And so for the last pillar, the global governance of artificial intelligence, recommendation 12, mandating, the numbers are mixed up. Recommendation 12 is the harm assessment for AI. So for harm assessments for AI, what we tried to address here is the incorporation of AI in more security and conflict matters of state. So AI is now being used in a lot of predictive policing and public messaging. We wanted to ensure that as the incorporation continues, there were harm assessments that were fair and included marginalized voices so that those assessments are helpful. And we have seen in ongoing conversations amongst ourselves and with experts that a lot of the times the experts that make up those harm assessment boards are mostly picked for technical expertise, and a lot of diversity is left out. And so what we wanted to emphasize here was to have different communities represented on these assessment boards. And so this includes diversity in terms of race, in terms of sexuality, so that the way the AI technology is used in different sectors, the offline structural issues that plague don't translate online. And we can see that on a more softer cultural level as well. So for instance, I learned today that AI was being incorporated into films. And so there's a film festival where all the films are AI generated. But when they were sharing the teams that made these films, as you can imagine, a lot of the team was experts and technological experts. And so the voices that are left out are those who traditionally don't have access to that level of technical expertise. But we have to ensure that even within the film space, social and cultural impacts are still being considered. And so mandating an independent, regional, and considerate harm assessment for AI applications is very important to us. On the next recommendation, so launching a regional AI education initiative led by youth and for youth. So we've discussed a lot on having AI literacy hubs in public spaces and for youth. But what is really important is to garner interest. And so we understand that this topic might not always be accessible. It might not always be a topic that people are interested in their free time. And so we recommended having a public opinion survey to garner what areas of AI are youth interested in. So what is something that we could address? And in this way, we could have AI youth learners and leaders and to drive this initiative and to ensure that we aren't just throwing expertise and information out there. And part of this curriculum that we're thinking of creating as well starts from the bottom in terms of understanding what is AI, but then goes all the way to the top of how is AI used, what are the next steps for AI, and what can it be used for as well. So including youth at all stages of AI applications. And so that finishes up the recommendations that we have. And I wanted to kind of introduce a little bit the timeline moving forward and how you guys as the audience can be involved as well. So we're in the further review drafting stage. And part of this stage includes receiving feedback and hearing from policymakers, multiple stakeholders from youth on what sticks, what doesn't stick, what can be improved on, what they would like to see more of, and we'd be so happy to hear your perspectives in this regard. And so we'll enter into our Q&A stage.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jerry, Junhee, Tina, for sharing all the insights. It really shows how much dedication you put into the project. I think it's quite solid, and we're looking forward to seeing if there are questions from the audience. I might start off with a question just here at the panel, and then please think about whether you have questions, and you can raise your hand. But I'll start with one question to the three panelists. Maybe you can share a little bit your personal experience with digital governance in Northeast Asia and how it kind of how it influenced your approach to the project and how you engaged with the project. I don't know who will start. Tina, maybe start.
Okay, so I work in disinformation and misinformation analysis, and with that we look at a lot of open source intelligence, so anything from social media discourse to information that's seen online. And I see that with the type of data that is being handled, a lot of the times data is processed in so many different ways, and it's given me a really different perspective of every information that we process in terms of the news or data sets, it's all been processed through different types of evaluation or lenses or ideology. So for me, my interest with digital technologies is in what ways has it been processed, and how has it been influenced by the things that have produced these data sets as well. So my interest is, especially in the types of information that is available and what's behind the information.
Junhee, you had an interesting example too, I think, from our discussions earlier.
Yes. When I share my background, so I engage, as Linda mentioned in the beginning, I engage mostly in human rights sector. So especially I engage in refugees, in migrants, and gender issues. So because AI is very important in every part of our lives, but especially with human rights and in AI is very a hot issue, as we mentioned in our presentation. Deepfakes or hate speeches are everywhere online, but also because I meet many migrant people, refugee people, and they face these kind of hate speeches, and especially this era, Northeast Asia really don't have communication right now because of the difficulties, what we're going on to political issues. And especially we know this is the very important time in Korea and for the world and for the regional aspect as well, because we have election soon and it's still going on. And I feel personally very sad that especially hate speeches against Chinese people are making it very difficult for our society to be very peaceful and because as many data show that Korea has one of the low birth rates in the whole world, but in that, and we also have like discriminations, hate speeches against like everyone. And what I feel personally very sad also, another thing is that we tried many decades to have the anti-discrimination law in Korea, but it's not getting through that as well. So in this kind of situation, our meeting in this Northeast Asia youth meeting is very meaningful for me. At least we youth are doing something to cooperate with each other. Thank you.
I have a personal example and then a more academic one. I'll start with the personal one. My mother, about I think 5 years ago, started learning how to use like a computer, and a couple of years ago got an iPad. And sometimes she kind of shares with me the change in her life after becoming more digitally connected. And I did think about how her free time prior to being introduced to technology was more just hanging with her children and reading books. And now it has shifted a little bit. She is more digitally connected in terms of international news and being more active in terms of a participant in social society. And so from that experience, it really hit home for me, just like on the very basic example of the benefits that technology can provide. And as we think about we live in an urban center, so outside the urban center and all the changes and the potential of change that can happen in those more rural communities, I think that there is really a pressing need on even the most lifestyle affects side of things. My more academic example pertains to my research. So I'm very interested in citizenship theory, and there's this ongoing sociocultural phenomenon where we define ideas like citizenship, which used to be very rigid and defined on a legal manner, top-down, telling us what is a citizen and what are the criteria you have to fulfill to be a citizen, but to understand that from the bottom up. So how do we see each other as citizens? As we kind of realize more of the fictive nature of nationality, what does the sociocultural side tell us? And as we dive further more into this, we realize that regional differences really do exist. And inside regions, such as Northeast Asia, there are value differences that are key to how we see each other. And as technology advances, and as AI technology, the advancement of it is largely driven by Western actors, sometimes some of these differences are lost. And to consider how we view each other, what are the priorities that we have as we incorporate AI into life, and how Northeast Asia's distinctive voice can still be maintained throughout this process. So that, to me, has been very, very interesting and a key component to how I've approached this topic.
Thank you, all of you. But I want to comment on a little bit on Jerry's example and the first example of your mom. And I just kind of can imagine the intergenerational kind of exchange that happens. And I think we're all almost, I think we're all young people in this room, and we probably all had to help our parents with computers and setting up the internet and, you know, like, oh, can you help me update this? And I'm sure the examples are many. So I want to kind of touch upon this a little bit. And how do you think, in what ways can intergenerational dialogue or intergenerational support, maybe by young people towards the elderly, or even like middle age, I would say, like, or maybe there, you know, two-way communication also possible, right? There are expertise also in the elder generation that can be passed on to youth. So there's potential for two-way dialogue. But maybe if you have any ideas, I mean, we talked about the AI, like digital literacy hubs, etc. Could there be, for instance, youth to elderly support, or are there any ideas that you have that you want to share?
Definitely. I think it's intergenerational dialogue on this matter is super, super important, and kind of building off of one of our recommendations. So AI literacy hubs and technology literacy hubs, while we focused a lot on the youth side of things and being youth directed, this is super transferable to ones that are more targeted to the elder generation. And so placement in public spaces, so outside of schools, in libraries and community centers where perhaps different demographics frequent more, that is very, very important. And as youth, being patient with ourselves and with our peers and with our parents is very, very important. I've definitely gone through several rounds of that with my own parents, from setting up the internet to even taking initiative and showing my mom like how to use ChatGPT or DeepSeek. It helps everyone in this manner because then you can explore and go on this learning initiative together. On a more formal basis, part of this includes just making sure that at all levels, at all demographics, that sometimes there is a fear associated with new technologies, and there's this conception that it's too difficult or we need more of a foundation. But as with all previous technologies that were more incorporated into society, there has to be accessibility, and it's just about having the materials to make it accessible, breaking it down into the bare basic foundations. And so this has to happen for all generations involved.
So for myself, I would think that there's kind of two parts to this question. In terms of, I think, how youth need to be aware of the older generation. We've seen a few policies, as you know, in Japan. Japan is a massive aging population. We've seen a few issues with policies related to the elderly population being almost too digitalized and having the generation being left behind almost with these transformations. So it's incredibly important to understand the level of digital literacy and be very compassionate about it, and to understand what actually would work in terms of digital transformations. And in terms of what I feel like the older generation can understand about the younger generation, this, I think, especially in a Northeast Asian context, maybe this is just Japanese culture, but there's a big emphasis on this is how things need to be, or this is how things go. And I think the world is very different now. how you navigate life, how you navigate your career, how you navigate going about different things is very different, and there's so many different approaches and different ways to do it. And I think the youth may prioritize different types of values in that. So to really respect it and to understand it, and I think also to be respectful of their perspective as well, and to understand that it's kind of different to the world that they did grow up in. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to see if there are any questions from the audience. I understand it's a bit scary to maybe ask in front of everyone, but please, if you do have a question, please raise your hand. Yeah?
Thank you for a very enlightening conversation. I'd like to address a question to all the panelists. You've spoken about the need to promote responsible AI and promote use these digital learning hubs for older generations. But within younger generations as well, I apologize, this is a rather Western-centric view, but within the young people in the West, there's growing skepticism or fear about the impact of technology. A recent study reported on by The Guardian suggests that about 50% of young people in Britain feel that they would be happier if they didn't have access to the internet. And this is certainly true when it comes to AI. Many young people are pointing to issues with the economic impacts, environmental impacts, and the impacts in education as young people's ability to critically think are perhaps impaired by an over-reliance on large language models. I was wondering if you saw any of the same criticism or reticence among younger generations in Northeast Asia, and if you had any ideas of how, well, to promote that there is perhaps a responsible AI usage to people who have these reservations. Thank you.
That's a really good question. And I would like to start by saying that I think the fear is valid. With a lot of new technologies, there is a fear that the existing structural issues that we have, so all the isms of racism, translate online because the people engaging, they can still be plagued by those isms as well. And I think with technology as well, with the ease of misinformation and disinformation, the skill of critical thinking becomes more and more important. But with that said, while I want to validate the fear that a lot of people have, I think technology throughout decades has brought new platforms and new issues and connectivity online that outweigh the negativity. And just because there are negatives doesn't mean that this process should be given up as a whole. And I've seen that particularly in China, because while I understand that some people don't want to be connected, you see in rural areas in China where connectivity has really changed and brought a lot of development, and it's changed the whole country throughout the past 30 years, and not just focusing on AI, but technology development as a whole. And so I think the process should not be on resisting the direction of where we're going, but just how that process unfolds. But I do have to say it's a paired conversation. But it kind of highlights the importance of the recommendations that we are proposing in terms of considering that all of these qualms that people have, they do need to be considered. They are valid.
And I think to add to that, I think specifically, well, in regards to this is completely out of my own kind of perception. But I feel the Northeast Asia region, they may be, especially the youth, are unaware of the actual impact of AI, because why would we be aware? We have no idea about these technologies and how they work. When we speak about the disinformation space, I'm especially kind of concerned about young people. As the older generation, we have experience, for example, attending forums like this or having conversations in person. We kind of understand how these conversations happen, or how people perceive things. But when you look at discourse online without any of this context or any of this experience, it seems very polarized, or these extremist views seem incredibly legitimate. So I think I am very concerned when it comes to the lack of context that I think the younger generation do have, just because of the lack of experience.
So I thank you for the good question. So I think what the world we're living, we have too much information. So we have to choose what is really right and wrong. And to have that, we have to build ourselves like how to have critical thinkings, and like you have to have your own values when you see the information. So, and I also think like for more younger generations, they are born with the technology. But as Linda mentioned in the earlier, that the generational issue, because some of the generation are not born with the technology, and I guess this has to, like, the technology is going to be more and more better. But what we can do is to accept and learn and be more used to the new technology that's going to come in the future. Even now, everything is growing very fast and speedy, but also what I believe is like we have to follow the ethnical issues at the same speed. So I hope you guys can think about this as well when you use AI, because AI is very convenient, but at the same time, it could be hurting someone or hurting like anyone, or has many issues, as you all know. Yeah, thank you.
What you mentioned now about kind of the speed and of technology reminds me of just the evolution of this project, because when we started and when we drafted the report that Jerry referenced initially in his presentation, we released that report in December 2022. And I don't think this report talks about artificial intelligence. We talked about the metaverse. And who talks about the metaverse these days? It's an old word, right? It's already out. And now everyone's talking about generative AI, and that's just 2 years ago. So yeah, it's evolving at just a lightning speed. But since I touched a little bit on the project and kind of the phases, Jerry has been involved for a long time, and Junhee and Tina has been involved this year. But I was wondering if you wanted to share maybe like your experiences being part of this regional initiative, and what have been surprising for you, what has been your favorite elements maybe, or what has been challenges also.
So for me, I lived in Korea for many, many years, but I do have friends all around the world, but not many in like Mongolia or China, Japan. So it was really very special time for me to engage with these issues who are interested in the same level and have different backgrounds from all around our region. And as Tina mentioned in her presentation, our region has very difficult history in the past, and it still affects our youth as well. And as I mentioned also in my experience in the earlier, so in this difficult political era that is happening right now, and you see many, not only in Korea, but in the different regions, we can see very far-right parties getting voted in those kind of situation. So it was very, very meaningful personally, because I felt very meaningful solidarity among our region, not only in Korea as well.
For myself, because all of the participants or representatives that were selected are, extremely, like specialists and experts in their own field. So it's really interesting to see how, we'll take the same sessions and they'll approach it in a completely different way, or add a completely different perspective, and also adding a cultural perspective to that. So being able to have this comparative approach to learning has been really interesting. Speaking with UN experts, I know maybe some of the youth here as well might be interested, but I've always been very interested in UN initiatives. To be able to listen to their sessions, and also to Linda and Jerry as well, to kind of see how they how they move and how they approach things has been a big learning experience. And in terms of, for me personally, I was not aware or hadn't really done a lot of research into different privacy standards or different cultural standards or cultural approaches to AI. So I found a lot of research that I think, Jerry, you put in your notes. I found that very interesting, and that's something that I'd like to continue to learn on as well. Thank you.
A highlight for me has really been learning from all of youth perspectives, and that includes you guys as well. The project was really born from collaborative voices and collaborative opportunities. So in one of the very, very early stages, there was a digital survey that was open to the public, and we garnered a lot of opinions and priorities from I believe over 140 youth members from across the region. And it was really interesting I know this sounds really weird, but it was really interesting to read through everything and to kind of just learn how differently we viewed things and also how similarly we viewed things as well. And I think because this process is so tied to youth voices that it's so important to be part of that. So, and there's always opportunities to get involved. These surveys are sent out to be replied to. So it's always great to have responses. And so that side I really, really enjoy. And also just the privilege of attending forums and just being here as well, being able to learn from people from various different walks of life who have dedicated their lives to certain sectors or are just venturing into learning about these topics and having their own perspective and opinions. That's always very important. In academia, sometimes you're just in your silo with other people who are just spent years on things, so having different perspectives is key, and it's helpful to everyone involved. So it's definitely been a very enjoyable process.
And I just want to echo that the Futuring Peace in Northeast Asia project, although we've had many phases and kind of moved in one direction, kind of moving towards drafting recommendations and then implementing them, it's like Futuring Peace in Northeast Asia is an overarching kind of initiative, and it's not ending. And I hope that some of you that are in the room might also be interested in joining the initiative. And if you are interested, please come and talk to us afterwards, and I'll get your emails down, and we'll make sure that you are on our email lists in the future if you are interested in being part of discussions such as this. And we also discuss other topics. As Jerry mentioned, one other track is a climate track or environmental peacebuilding track. Where next week, actually, another group of very great young peace builders will launch a Northeast Asia Youth Climate Council in Mongolia, and with youth from the ROK, from Japan, and from China and Mongolia. We've also looked at, WPS, women, peace and security, gender issues. Political issues are kind of always there. Whatever you talk about, those issues are kind of incorporated into the discussion somehow. But there are different tracks, and we hope to see more people involved also. It doesn't end here. I'll see if I have. Are there any other questions from the audience? If not, I'm going to ask a kind of strategic foresight question to our panel. And this is kind of our overarching question, and it has been raised in the past phases of the dialogue, of the initiative. But if you can kind of look into the future, what do you envision Northeast Asia as a region to look like? What is your future kind of ideal vision? It's a hard question.
I have two answers. So my first one is more idealized. It would be great if we were just one happy, big region with no issues, and we just picked the best of all the countries involved and came together. My second one is a little more, not pessimistic, but I think there's a lot of tensions that our regions will have to sort out, value differences as well. But I'm very positive that, and we've seen it in the younger generation being more open and porous to difference and to cultural exchange. So, for instance, I've seen more in Hong Kong, China, students from all across the region entering the universities there, going on programs, and that has been really good to kind of address some of the previously negative stereotypes that exist in the region. And so I think there will be a shift in that as well. And then on an academic level, we have seen in discussions about nationalism that there is a deconstruction of very fervent patriotism, because we're beginning to understand how much of that is led by the government or how much is led by, in the past few years, where there was a benefit to being nationalist because we had wars going on. There was a need to be nationalist to make sure that the public were supportive. And as that kind of wanes and goes down and people think about what does it mean to be part of the region, or what does it mean to be Korean or Chinese or Japanese, there are a lot of similarities that can be born out of that. And so we kind of reconsider our identity in that manner. And I think as we move towards that, we'll enter this kind of like post-nationalist stage. That's what we like to call it, where it's more community-based rather than nation-based. But yes, so optimistic, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of, I think, general political landscape of things or geopolitical landscape of things, just challenging is one word. I am a little bit pessimistic about how things may go. But in terms of what I feel like it's important for the youth to do, for everyone here to do, I think is to really think about our Asian identity, think about our history, learn about how we have interacted with each other, and learn about the different phases that we have had in interactions with each other. And when things are happening, to really be engaged in what is happening and what are the issues, and really try to understand from these contexts. Online, I mean, just as a disinformation person, online you'll see so many narratives coming up that try and paint things in one way. They're such complex issues. They take so much time to understand, so many different perspectives that come in with it. So I think it's an important thing for the youth, for myself as well, to continue to educate myself on the different perspectives and the different nuances that do exist. And to really be aware of the information that we process and be aware of the historical significance that we are currently in as well.
So when I think about future, I hope to be better than today. So as Jerry and Tina mentioned, I also agree with. I want to be more like, I feel like our generation, our youth can do like better because it's going to be our future. It's going to be better than now. So I also believe that interacting each other and exchanging with others, like other different countries around Northeast Asia, is very important. And also you have to be open to listen and understand each other. As Tina mentioned about the history backgrounds, we have to know the history well and accept our identities and how that will make us more connected and what we can do as youth. And I want to say that I do not want to lose hope for the future. And in that part, if besides the government exchanges, because that will depend on the political issues. So I want to focus such as civil societies, exchanges, or youth, how we're doing now, or private sectors has to make their role that governments cannot do. So we individuals have our own role to be open-minded to other cultures in Asia and Northeast Asia. So because we think we are not that, we don't give that much impact to someone, but actually you can actually make someone very different. You can make someone change how they view the world or the region. So I want to say that you are all important and you are taking a big and important role in our history. Thank you.
That was a wonderful and very touching message, to be honest. I think, and something I think that we can all bring with us from this session, that youth are powerful, and even if it feels like it's not, creating impacts here and now, I think that we do, as youth, bring a lot of power and impact to society, even if it's long term or in the here and now too, by influencing what's going on. One thing, I think I'll just ask one kind of final question, and then we'll wrap up. And what do you think about the recommendations that you've put forward, 13 recommendations? Why do you think they are unique or kind of different from what is already out there? And what do you hope will happen with these recommendations? And what do you think are the next steps? And what should the next steps be in terms of the recommendations and the project perhaps also?
So I can just speak personal expectations as well. Then I hope, I believe what we gathered, the 13 recommendations, I hope especially the government or other civil societies or who are engaged in this AI or digital cooperation, they could accept or apply our recommendations, because with AI and technology and digital cooperation, you can't really do anything by yourself, as we are living into dependent era. So as what is one of the sector is about data sharing. So this will be very important in our future, and I believe that our recommendations has dealing many types of different areas. So maybe it will be really, really nice if any of those recommendations could be really, we could see that in our eyes in the future. Yeah.
I have an answer that's kind of based on the past phases. And so one of the joys of this initiative and one of the benefits is that youth in this initiative can bring policy recommendations to tables where previously we don't have seats. And this initiative in the past phases, we've presented to and communicated with policymakers, with diplomats, and this process has been great in terms of exposure and sharing and communicating our ideas into those spaces. And so on that level, I am optimistic, and I think our regional based recommendations have a lot of power in that sense. The second part, these initiatives were born out of reviewing existing regional initiatives. We reviewed in past phases national legislation to understand what was there and what wasn't there. We reviewed ongoing regional initiatives and then also initiatives outside the region. So we really pulled from all of these factors and condensed it into recommendations that were relevant and pertinent. And so in that way, our recommendations are different because we anchored it to youth voices, but we also made sure that they had substantive value logically as well. And so when we combine these two factors and how this initiative brings us into spaces like Jeju Forum and also the drafting stage and reviewing stage at large, as mentioned before by my colleagues here, includes talking with experts, there's a lot of benefit in that process. And yeah.
Yeah, as Jerry mentioned, these recommendations are based on a youth perspective, but we are talking about the Global Digital Compact as well. So it's been very, I think, obviously significant that we have provided that youth perspective. I just wanted to emphasize again how that really is important, because for example, like social media companies or big companies, they'll be mostly focusing on, maximizing benefits. Political actors will be thinking about balancing this along with the well-being of the overall countries as well, but they have other things that they are also concerned about. But coming from a youth perspective, we really get to think about well-being and how it can actually help us. And in some ways, no one else will really represent these perspectives for us. So I think having that really lived and subjective experience makes this a very, very unique proposal as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a truly inspiring discussion. It's been great to get everything here on the table and have a seat at the DigiForum. And thank you again so much to DigiForum for allowing us to have this panel discussion this year and in previous year. And I hope that our collaboration will continue. I just also wanted to say, what we've heard today presented by these youth, it really reaffirms what we in DPPA and in the UN also firmly believe is that innovation and dialogue must be anchored in kind of people-centered approaches, and it must be inclusive of youth and of women and other marginalized groups, a civil society, kind of all-round approach. So I think we are creating value in that sense. And the 13 or the policy recommendations that have been shared, they're more than technical proposals. This project is even more about kind of that regional engagement and engaging with people that are different from you somehow, but also share a lot of similarities, and to call for action somehow, and have that engagement towards the government and towards private companies and others in society who are kind of action-oriented. And we're building our future together. And I think, we can say we're pessimistic or we're optimistic, but I do hope that the future will hold, that it's promising and that it will be better than it already is. So thank you so much again for all your contributions and for all of you who joined us. And to the DigiForum again for hosting us and providing the space for conversation. So thank you so much and have a good Friday night. Thank you.